experts were all proven wrong.
Do you see the message that you're sending?
Evidence the system is working.
We continue to expose the truth.
That is where the story begins.
And what a privilege it is to speak for the man I love with all my heart. I am so proud of you, Bob. I once called myself the most optimistic man in America. Maybe that comes from taking the long view. It's amazing that almost 60 years have passed since my neighbors in Russell, Kansas, and the voters of what we call the Big First District sent me to this esteemed institution. I arrived in Washington as green as a Kansas wheat field in May. Fortunately, I had some marvelous mentors, both Republicans and Democrats, to help guide me through the legislative maze. In the House, statesmen like Jerry Ford and Charlie Halleck. And in the Senate, giants like Everett Dirksen, Howard Baker, Hubert Humphrey, and George McGovern all showed me a decency and dedication that transcended any party or generational differences. It was Ev Dirksen who famously observed, "I am a man of fixed and unbending principles, and one of my principles is flexibility." Put another way, even conviction politicians accept the need for compromise from time to time. This is how the American Republic was built. And we remain a nation defined by our diversity, a coat of many colors, and a healthy respect for those with whom we may agree to disagree. For many years, I occupied a suite of offices in the Capitol just down the hall. S-230 is an impressive setting any way you look at it, but it's the view from S-230 that sets it apart. Sweeping down Capitol Hill, past General Grant on his bronze horse, to George Washington's obelisk and the marble shrine to Abraham Lincoln. Since 2004, that view has included a memorial, which I am truly proud to have championed. A fitting tribute to the 16 million citizen warriors of World War II and those on the home front who aided them in preserving civilization in its darkest hour. The view from S-230 extends still further to the hills of Arlington. The countless heroes who rest there in soil hallowed by their service practiced many faiths, spoke in many tongues, but this much they had in common: patriots before partisans. They put country before self. They gave everything for generations they would never see to uphold the freedoms that make life itself worth living. It's a long way from S-230 to the slopes of Arlington, but nowhere near as long as the view they took of their obligations to posterity and to the defense of values that shine as bright as the gold in any medal. So I share with you a lesson learned over 60 years. Leadership begins with the long view. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Mike Pence.
Thank you. Mr. President, Speaker Ryan, Leader Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Leader Schumer, distinguished members of Congress, to Vice President Quayle, Governor Brownback, to Senator Elizabeth Dole and Robin, all the members of the Dole family, and especially to the newest recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal, the Honorable Senator Bob Dole. It's humbling for me to stand before you today. I do so as Vice President, as President of the Senate, and as I told Bob, as the husband of 32 years of a Kansas-born Karen Pence. As we heard today from so many speakers more eloquent than me, from the windswept plains of Kansas to the war-torn hills of Italy to the marbled halls of Washington, D.C., Bob Dole has spent a lifetime serving this country with courage and conviction. Today we heard stories from those who've known and worked with Senator Dole throughout his life. We've heard the examples of his character, and they are legion. But for my part, there was one moment in his life that seemed for me to embody the character of this great American. I mean, at every stage of his life, Bob epitomized the greatest generation. When you answered the call of duty, serving as a decorated combat veteran in World War II, when you represented your state in the Congress of the United States, when you led the Congress as majority leader. And there was also that time in history when Senator Bob Dole answered the call to run for President of the United States. But it was in the midst of that campaign that he did something that I believe generations of those of us who are called to public service will remember and reflect on. As the Senate Majority Leader, Bob Dole held one of the most powerful positions in Washington, D.C., a role that would have been waiting for him if he'd lost the race for the White House. But on a spring day in 1996, Bob Dole did something different. But not different from his character, not different from the long expanse of service in his life. Bob Dole took to the floor of the United States Senate and did what other statesmen have done in the history of this nation, and he voluntarily relinquished a position of authority. He bid that historic chamber goodbye. He stepped down from the United States Senate and he told the American people, quote, "I will seek the presidency with nothing to fall back on but the White House or home." In that moment, Bob, I'll always believe that the American people saw your heart, your selflessness. For you did in that moment, as you've done throughout your life, you put the interests of the country first. And you demonstrated your unwavering commitment to serve the American people, no matter the cost. Senator Dole, it is my great honor to stand before you today and offer a few words among so many others. We've heard of your life of service and of consequence, but Bob, you deserve to hear it from someone far more important than me on this day. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce on this special occasion the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
Thank you very much. And I must say that it is my great honor to join you today and to witness this incredible moment in history, the presentation of Congress's highest civilian honor to our friend, a true American hero, Bob Dole. And Bob, it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much. Great job. Great job. Bob earned his place in the Chronicle of American Legends by the time he was 21. And in the decades since, he has never stopped earning his place in the pages of American history. I also want to recognize Senator Elizabeth Dole. Elizabeth, that was beautiful. Your words were beautiful. Thank you very much. You've been my friend for a long time. Thank you very much. And you've meant so much to our country and done so much for so many, and I know that very well. Thank you. Everything we've heard today reminds us of the thoughts of Second Lieutenant Dole when he was more than 4,000 miles away from where we are today, many years ago, as his body laid paralyzed against a cold, jagged Italian hill. His thoughts went back home, back to that small town in Russell, Kansas. On Hill 913, in those darkest moments, Bob Dole had home in his heart. He wanted to go home. And in the end, it was home that saved him. Home was his grandma, who believed that he would walk when the doctors doubted that he would even live. It was his mother whose love and cooking fueled the fight to move his legs just a half-inch higher each and every day. Half an inch each day, Bob. Half an inch, she would say, each day. It was Dawson's Drugstore on Main Street, where a cigar box sat on the counter to solicit donations for his so many surgeries. Home was where Bob Dole learned the classic American grit. He knows about grit. That got him through 39 months in hospice. It was where he learned the values of loyalty and integrity, hard work, faith, and family that have defined him ever since. To the stars, through difficulties, is the state motto. To the stars, through difficulties. A beautiful motto of the truly great state of Kansas, and the perfect description for Senator Dole's extraordinary life. From his first year as a young representative from Kansas to his tenure as Majority Leader of the United States Senate, all the way to today, Bob Dole has never stopped fighting for those values. He fights for Kansas, for veterans, for the disabled, and for all of his fellow Americans, and he always has. Tens of thousands of veterans have boarded honor flights to visit World War II Memorial, thanks to, in great measure, Bob Dole. Nearly every day at the memorial, you can see tough war heroes in their 80s and 90s moved to tears, and many recount the unforgettable experience of being greeted at their memorial, and much to their surprise, by Senator Dole, somebody they have great respect for. One World War II veteran from Ohio wrote him after a visit. He told him that before he traveled on the honor flight, that's capital H, capital F, very important, honor flight, to see the memorial, he felt like he hadn't amounted to very much. He didn't feel good about himself. But when he came to Washington, met Senator Dole, and saw the memorial to his service, he said, I truly felt like a hero. For a day, I've never felt any better. That's because he remembered he was part of something much greater than himself. He was an American patriot who defended freedom in its need of hour. He really went out and he defended it more than ever. Those who wear our nation's uniform are part of an unbroken chain of heroes. Their sacrifice, Bob's sacrifice, keeps us safe and prosperous and free. long after we are gone, when our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren visit that extraordinary tribute on the National Mall, they will no longer find World War II veterans gazing up at their memorial to their friends and their deeds. They will be gone, but they will still stand in the place where our heroes have stood for so many years. Their hearts will be filled by the beauty and reverence of that grand memorial, and they will hear the story of a great man who rose up from a small town in the heart of America to become a soldier and a congressman and a leader admired by all. They will hear the story of Bob Dole, and in hearing that story, they will truly learn what it means to be a great American. Bob, that is the legacy you have left our nation, and it will outlive us all. You're a friend, you are a patriot, a hero, a leader, and today you have become a recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal. It's an honor to be with you, Bob. Thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as the Chaplain of the United States Senate, Dr. Barry Black, gives the benediction.
Let us pray. Eternal Lord God, the giver of every good and perfect gift, we thank you for the gift of Senator Robert J. Dole, a hero and an exemplary role model for patriotism, service, justice, and freedom. Lord, we're grateful for the beauty of his life that continues to bring light to darkness, joy to sadness, pardon to injury, and hope to despair. May his magnanimous living challenge us all to see you more clearly, love you more dearly, and to follow you more nearly each day. Lord, bless and keep Senator Bob Dole and his precious Elizabeth in all of their going out and coming in. Keep them without stumbling or slipping. And one day, may they both hear you say, "Well done, good and faithful servants. Enter into the joys of your Lord." We pray this in your great name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain at your seats for the departure of the official party, and until your row is invited to depart by a visitor services representative. Thank you.
In a rare moment of bipartisanship on Capitol Hill, as one of the nation's greatest is honored with the Congressional Gold Medal. Now to John Roberts at the White House with more. John.
Well, that was quite a time that we just saw there in the rotunda of the Capitol with one of the lions of American politics, Bob Dole, being honored with the Congressional Gold Medal, joining the ranks of people like Jack Nicklaus, Shimon Peres, Rosa Parks, the Dalai Lama, Jackie Robinson, and because I know that Neil Charles is such a fan of space, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, the crew of Apollo 11. Of course, dozens upon dozens of people have received this Congressional Gold Medal. But what an amazing scene there for 94-year-old Bob Dole, the senator from Kansas who spent 35 years in the Senate representing his country and his constituents back home. I remember covering his presidential campaign in 1996. I mean, what a very special moment for him and Liddy. There's just no question about that, Charles.
Absolutely. It was absolutely wonderful, touching, and a beautiful thing to see. Thanks a lot, John. I want to go now to Fox News senior Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergam for more. Chad.
Yeah, this was a rather extraordinary ceremony, considering how well revered Bob Dole is on both sides of the aisle, and also how significant the rotunda is to Bob Dole. He was here several years ago when Daniel Inouye, the late senator from Hawaii, passed away. Inouye laid in repose in the rotunda. It was around Christmas time a few years ago, and Bob Dole, having trouble walking, he got up and walked across the rotunda to be with his friend Daniel Inouye. He said he didn't want to see him in this state where he had to be pushed up in a wheelchair. Daniel Inouye and Bob Dole were attached politically at the hip. They were wounded just over the same hillside in Italy during World War II, and they both kind of worked with each other as they worked through their injuries. Daniel Inouye had basically lost an arm. He wanted to be a surgeon. Bob Dole had the same problem here, and then they both wanted to get into politics. Daniel Inouye came to Capitol Hill before Bob Dole. He was first a congressman from Hawaii, then moved to the Senate, and he sent him a telegram, Senator Dole, and said, "Hey, Bob, why aren't you here yet?" Bob Dole came a few years later to the House of Representatives. He then came to the Senate. Probably Steny Hoyer, the minority whip from Maryland, put it best. He said, it's appropriate that we give Bob Dole the gold medal because he set the gold standard. That's probably the key here on Capitol Hill, just how revered he was on both sides of the aisle. Pat Roberts, senator from Kansas, indicated that when they were talking about giving Bob Dole the Congressional Gold Medal, it only took him 2 days to get all 100 senators to sign on. And the president commented a lot about Bob Dole's legacy, not so much in legislation, which is significant. He's one of the most significant senators of all time here, but getting the World War II memorial built just about a half mile from here on the National Mall. 94 years old, it was his life's work after he left the Senate, and that opened several years ago and is a legacy to Bob Dole, and the president mentioned that during his remarks today.
Thank you very much, Chad. Indeed, that was a remarkable scene and one rarely seen these days. In the meantime, on Wall Street, stocks rocketing significantly higher. This is Apple announced plans to hire the Dow punching through 26,000, closed at the high of the session. The tech giant says it's investing billions of dollars in its U.S. operation and pledging thousands of new jobs. And guess what's driving it? That's right, those tax cuts. Welcome, everyone. I'm Charles Payne in for Neil Cavuto. And forget about a government shutdown that may be 2 days away. I want to go to Deirdre Bolton on the great news right here and right now. Deirdre.
That is right, Charles. So 26K, our first close above that level for the Dow. Of course, yesterday during the session, we crossed that mark, but then closed lower. So today's the day. There we go. Write it down. Huge Dow milestones. We have been watching these 5 alone, as you very well know, Charles. Last year, 5 times did the Dow break through these 1,000-point markers each along the way. Hey, we are in a 9-year bull market. But you mentioned Apple. All the sentiment around Apple's contributions, which I'll go into detail in a minute, really trumping worries about this potential government shutdown. So Apple announcing, in fact, it's going to repatriate billions of dollars from overseas. The company saying it's going to build a new campus somewhere in the U.S. in the next 5 years and hire 20,000 new employees. So now the location of that new campus, it's going to be announced later this year, according to the company, and it is one that will initially house technical support for customers. So Apple also saying it will make a direct contribution of more than $350 billion. That's a big number. To the U.S. economy over the next 5 years. So they're going to be making investments, purchasing materials from American companies. The tech giant estimating it's going to spend $55 billion of that this year alone. So more than 9,000 American suppliers, more than 9,000 American manufacturers are going to get more business from Apple. So due to changes from the new tax law, getting back to this money that could be repatriated, we did the math. Our calculations show about $245 billion is going to be coming back. So that is money that comes back from overseas right here to the U.S. And of course, this was really a big part of the Trump administration's tax reform. Just get money back here on these shores, strike deals with American companies to either save jobs here or create jobs here. And that was certainly one of the president's campaign promises. Take a look at how the markets have performed since the election in November of last year. You can see why people who have retirement accounts, 401ks, they're feeling pretty good these days. And by our count, at least 10 major corporations have paid out cash bonuses to employees worth a total of about $3.5 billion. That's my calculation, Charles, back of the envelope. And that's not even counting other forms of incentives such as pay raises. So reason for stock market optimism, personal optimism for many workers. Charles, back to you.
Thank you very much. We're all optimistic. What a day, Deirdre. I want to go now to market watcher Larry Glazer, who says that Democrats were rude today. They voted against those tax cuts. Also, FBN's Elizabeth McDonald and a Democratic strategist, Chuck Rocha. Let me start with you, Larry. The news every single day gets better and better. Corporate America is sharing the wealth. Over 2 million people have been positively impacted. And by the way, hasn't hit personal paychecks, but that comes in early February.
Right. You know, Charles, that's so true. And look, this is the market celebrating today. The market said, hallelujah, the economic plan is actually working. We're not just doing dividends. We're not just doing bonuses. We're not just doing stock buybacks. We're creating jobs, jobs, jobs. And Steve Jobs would be so proud of Apple today. 20,000 high-paid jobs in this country. Those are good jobs. Those are middle-class jobs. Those are well-paid jobs. That's what we really want here. That's what it's all about. And, you know, when we look at the economic plan, it's so exciting to see that finally we're getting some traction in this country.
Well, yeah, it was stunning what Apple said. So when you do the back of the envelope calculations, it looks like most all of its cash is coming home. Right. $207 billion after taxes invested here or elsewhere. We're not sure yet. We're also seeing pharma deals could be coming down, too. The drug makers could be bringing cash back home. This is striking what's going on. We're counting 170 companies so far doing things like increasing wages, bonuses, 401k contributions. It's a striking, it's a different point in time that we're at right now versus Obama's stimulus. Even President Obama said that would not create shovel-ready jobs. But I don't think anybody saw this coming, that these 170 companies would react like this.
You know, Chuck, one of the things that Democrats pushed back on was the notion that corporate America would bring money back from overseas. And that $245 billion Apple's bringing back is more than the total that Democrats told us will come back. So far, you got to admit, this has been an amazing deal.
Look, I'm always going to root for the American economy, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican office. I'm always going to root for American jobs. But let's be clear with your viewers. Apple had enough money sitting overseas tax-free where they could have bought American Airlines and General Motors. It was hundreds of billions of dollars. And as a small businessman, I own an LLC. I wish I could park my profits overseas and only pay 20% taxes, unlike the 49% that I'm having to pay in Washington.
So you should be thrilled that President Trump allowed these companies to bring that money back. And now we all benefit. Everyone watching this show will benefit from the fact that, hey, for some reason we had these crazy taxes in place. And by the way, speaking of bipartisanship, neither side of the aisle did anything about it, Chuck. Trump comes in, he puts down a lower rate, then he removes it completely, and the money is pouring in.
I think the proof will be in the pudding. I think if the American people really feel exactly what you're saying, Charles, it could be a tough day for Democrats, but it hasn't been borne out under President Obama, who doubled the stock market, created 11 million new jobs, and us Democrats still lost 61 seats in the U.S. House. So it's not reciprocal.
Well, here's the thing, Larry. You couple this with what we're seeing in the stock market. The only thing that stopped the market from going up today was the closing bell.
That's right. You know, today was a victory for the American worker. Imagine, Charles, if we actually passed infrastructure spending in this country, if we actually build roads, bridges, and tunnels in this country. I mean, imagine what the economy would really do. And I think the reason the market went up so much today, it was surprised how much money Apple's really bringing back. $250 billion, a 50% increase in headcount in this country. I mean, that's huge. Even I'm surprised that that's what's happening here. Yeah. So I think it really is shockingly optimistic, and we hope there's more to come. We want to see this from other companies.
I think so.
Well, Wall Street economists also note that the reason we grew at 1.5% under Obama is because there was overregulation of major sectors of the U.S. economy. Yeah. We're talking the internet, banking, energy, and so forth, healthcare. So Ben Bernanke in 2002, Charles, said this could happen. Right. A money-financed helicopter drop after a tax cut. He said that about Japan, and we saw that. He said that 16 years ago, and we knew this could work, and now it appears to be working.
It's happening. I mean, we had regulations on dust particles, so I think we went too far. Thank you all very, very much. By the way, those obsessed with a certain S word in D.C., got another one for you. S-H-U-T, as in shutdown. Where's the focus on avoiding that?
Starting center.
The showdown over the shutdown. Protests erupting on Capitol Hill today over DACA as lawmakers try to cut a deal to keep the government running. Right now, it's looking dicey. To Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill with this high-stakes battle. Mike.
Hi, Charles. Good afternoon. The offer is a government funding extension that would allow more time for negotiation on a long-term budget and also immigration. The plan would essentially keep the government open through February 16th. It would extend a children's health insurance package for 6 years. It would delay some Obamacare-related taxes, and it would also put off the DACA fight for later. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is defending holding off on dealing with immigration until lawmakers know they have a package that President Trump supports and that President Trump would be willing to sign into law. As you mentioned, protesters have been up here on Capitol Hill very vocal, trying to make their case for a DACA deal now. The president gave Congress until March 5th to come up with a legislative fix. Democrats and a lot of these folks are trying to pressure for an outcome sooner.
We don't know whether the House will send us this bill, but the revulsion towards that bill was broad and strong. Number two, we Democrats believe that we want to do everything we can to avoid a shutdown, but we Democrats believe if there is one, it'll fall on the Republicans' backs.
The real first test will come in the House. If the House can pass the bill, there are a lot of folks betting that Senate Democrats up for re-election this year won't want to own a government shutdown. Charles?
Thank you very much. To the Freedom Caucus, which signaling that they're not going to sign on to any short-term spending bill without military funding included. So it's not a risky move. We're going to go to Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Scott Perry, who is a member of the Freedom Caucus. Congressman, you know, of course, the American public is grappling with the notion of yet another continuing resolution, kicking the can down the road, and nothing resolved in D.C. Yet you're willing to even forego that if you don't get the military spending?
Well, Charles, nothing is going to be resolved unless somebody stands firm on something. This isn't the first time we've done this. As a matter of fact, members of the Freedom Caucus said we should have stayed in August, stayed through the August break and worked through this. And since the Senate didn't want to do that and many members of the House didn't want to do that, then we came back September. We passed 12 appropriations bills. It's been 100 days. The Senate has passed 0. They have no reason to do anything. They're just going to continue doing these one-month CRs. Meanwhile, you get troops in contact. You got troops out on the front line. You got people that aren't flying, we got half the ships that we used to, and we're not going to fund that and go month to month to month and then finally give them some funding, I don't know, maybe 4 months before the end of the fiscal year and then blame them when they can't spend it correctly. It's absurd.
It sounds like your argument is as much with your Republican colleagues in the Senate as it is with Democrats.
Well, if somebody wants to say they're willing to shut down the government because they don't want to fund the military or because they want to put people that are here illegally in front of funding the military, they can make that argument. But I think we can agree that we need to find solutions there in hand, but we got to get to it. We wasted the month of August. We could have been here. The Senate has wasted 100 days passing no appropriations bills. And if we continue to just do monthly CRs, why would they ever pass any appropriations bills?
Well, the bottom line is I think the stakes are pretty high, and there are a lot of things out there. President Trump wants his national security policy implemented. He wants the border wall. He wants the enforcement of immigration laws. He'd like to change chain migration and some of the other things. Democrats desperately want DACA. Isn't this the perfect backdrop to perhaps finally get something done? And if so, can the Republicans themselves find a way to unite?
Well, we have a bill in the House that we're asking our leadership to have a vote on, and it's a compromise bill for us. We want to put that thing on the floor and see where everybody stands on it. I don't understand why we must take the Senate version. I understand there's going to be some differences, but that's why you have conferences, as opposed to, well, it's the only thing the Senate can pass, so you have to accept that. Nobody ran for the House of Representatives to take orders from the Senate. We have two bodies here. We should be working together.
Representative Scott Perry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen says criminal charges may be coming for leaders of sanctuary cities. I want you to meet the sheriff who's been pushing for that and hear why the judge says it will never be able to happen.
I think we charge some of these sanctuary cities with violating federal law. I think if they knowingly harbor and shield a known illegal alien, a public safety threat, in a jail and won't give us access to that alien.
But they are, Director, right? In a lot of cases, they're doing just that. Then what do you do if they're protecting, or there's a shield of protection around such individuals? How do you force the point?
We got to work with the Department of Justice.
Acting ICE Director Thomas Homan telling Neil we should bring criminal charges against leaders of sanctuary cities harboring illegal aliens. Well, he could get his wish. The head of the Department of Homeland Security just telling lawmakers charges are coming. To Bristol County, Massachusetts, Sheriff Thomas Hodgins, who's actually been pushing for this for some time. Sheriff, it looks like the federal government, someone in the federal government heard you, and they're coming to the rescue. What do you think of this? I mean, do you really believe it could be pulled off?
Oh, I absolutely do, and I think it absolutely should. First of all, I think the Attorney General had taken an approach, as did Homeland Security, to try to see that they could come to reason, but obviously people like Rahm Emanuel and Jerry Brown and others are just thumbing their nose at the law and saying, we're going to pick and choose what laws we want to follow, and this is one we won't. So as far as any other citizen in this country, if you were to do the exact same thing, I can guarantee you the feds would be on you immediately if you are attempting to harbor or conceal someone you know to be in the country illegally. It's a felony under Title 8, Section 1324, and every elected official that violates their oath puts the people of our country at risk by protecting these lawbreakers ought to be held accountable like everybody else. Arrest warrants ought to be issued.
Well, I'll tell you, in your state alone, later on today, an article came out about sanctuary mayors laughing at the DHS boss. They include the Bay State mayor, Boston's mayor, Cambridge's mayor. They're laughing. They say, hey, you know, some of us are veterans. Some of us, you know, we're all elected by the people here. It's a joke. They're not taking this seriously.
Well, you know, look, when I first testified before Congress in last March, and Congressman King asked me what we should do, I said we need to issue arrest warrants for these individuals. Mayor Curtatone from Cambridge got on national television and said, well, have the sheriff come get me. And what I explained in response was, look, he's going to be very disappointed. It probably won't be me, but it will be somebody else, and it should be somebody else. They may be laughing now, but the people of this country don't think it's funny that they're harboring and concealing people that put them at greater risk, them being the people that they represent, and taking care of these lawbreakers. Their job is to protect the people that they were elected to serve. Right. They want to protect the people who are here illegally.
Do you worry, though, that this could actually make these mayors and governors more sympathetic? I mean, could you imagine a perp walk? Do you want to see Jerry Brown with the cuffs on and a perp walk with federal troops surrounding him? Because it could actually backfire also.
Well, I don't see that. I think most Americans are fed up with this nonsense where we have elected officials who think that they can pick and choose what laws to follow, but when it comes to the American people, they're expected to uphold these laws. Look, this isn't about people wanting them to be in handcuffs, but you know what? It's not the people's decision, it's their decision, just like it would be ours. We have a choice. Follow the law or suffer the consequences, and they ought to suffer the consequences if they're going to try to prevent law enforcement from getting these people who are a threat to the American citizens and legal residents if they try to inhibit us from being able to hold them back.
Well, I can tell you right now, it looks like the Department of Homeland Security is going to throw down the gauntlet, and we'll take one step closer to this ultimate game of chicken. Sheriff, thank you very much as usual.
Long overdue.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Charles. Great to be here.
By the way, we apologize also for an error earlier in this segment. We had the incorrect video having to do with the NFL. All right, fair and balanced now. I want to bring in Judge Andrew Napolitano on why this push to bring charges will never happen. The judge is coming. He's next.